Osama bin Laden was born on March 10, 1957, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Osama was the seventh of 50 born to Mohammed bin Laden. His father had owned the largest construction company in the entire Saudi kingdom. Osama was a very privileged boy growing up, much like his siblings that got educations in the West. All of Muhammad's kids went to work for him after their schooling except for Osama. By the time Osama was 18, he had married Nawwa Ghanem, his 14-year-old first cousin. In 1976, Osama had graduated from Al Thagr School. After graduating, he then headed to Jeddah, where he attended King Abdulaziz University. Some say he graduated and received a degree in public administration or civil engineering. Osama had no time to use his degree, since the Soviets had invaded Afghanistan in 1979. Osama had immediately joined the Afghan resistance to fight for his country. Under the aid from the CIA, he began training a group of Islamic jihadists. In 1989, when the Soviet Union left Saudi Arabia, Osama became known as a hero along with his group of freedom fighters. Osama was quite upset with the idea of his country having to rely on U.S. troops. He fought with many of his leaders, saying that their presence obscened sacred religious soil. In 1992, silencing Osama was almost impossible, so it had led him into being banished, where he ended up living in Sudan in exile. In 1993, the next year, Osama had started to put together a group called Al-Qaeda, otherwise known as the Base. This group consisted of many military-trained Muslims who he had known beforehand. These soldiers were well-mannered and loyal, so that they would follow any order from their superiors under Islamic law. Once formed, the group started globally organized attacks around the world. In 1994, the Saudi government took Osama's citizenship from all the use of extremist jihadi activity. With the goal of drawing the U.S. into war, Osama had set off truck bombs against U.S. forces in Saudi Arabia. His entire goal was to make a single, true Islamic state. In 1997, Al-Qaeda claimed full responsibility for the killings of the tourists in Egypt. In 1998, U.S. embassies in Nairobi, Kenya, and Tanzania were bombed. Osama had moved to Afghanistan, where he was welcomed by the Taliban militia of the country. While being protected by the militia, Osama declared a holy war against the U.S. with a series of religious statements. The year is 2001. By now, bin Laden has succeeded in many attacks on many different countries, using Al-Qaeda assistance and the endless amount of money. On September 11, 2001, Osama had delivered the largest terrorist attack on the U.S. in history. Before the attack, a group of Al-Qaeda jihadists hijacked 4 commercial U.S. airlines, all of which were carrying passengers. The first 2 planes collided into the World Trade Center towers. The third plane crashed into the U.S. Pentagon, while the fourth was retaken and crashed in Pennsylvania. The plan involving the fourth plane was said to be crashed into the U.S. Capitol. During the attack, a total of 3,000 civilians were killed. Under the presidency of George W. Bush, the government formed a coalition that overthrew the Taliban. After this, Osama had gone into hiding for more than 10 years, while being hunted on the Afghanistan and Pakistan border. Bin Laden released a recorded video of him claiming responsibility for the attacks on 9/11 in 2004. After all the years of the U.S. waiting to get back on Al-Qaeda, justice was finally served on May 2, 2011. The plan of locating and killing Osama bin Laden consisted of about 8 months. The mission was a night raid on a high-walled compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A team of American Special Forces, led by CIA Director Leon Panetta, located the compound, which was 40 miles away from Islamabad. This team had killed Osama bin Laden. Osama was shot several times and they collected his body as proof of evidence. The day the world found out that Osama bin Laden had been killed, it had shocked everyone who had known about his history of terror. Osama had not only attacked America, but other countries as well. This never forgotten weight was suddenly lifted off the world's shoulders once it was confirmed that in fact he had been deceased. Many Americans gathered in celebration at different government buildings, chanting and praying that America was finally safe again. When Osama was alive, America lived in fear, every day waiting for him to strike again. Osama inflicted so much fear into the U.S. that when he was killed, the tension diminished. Because of Osama's attack on 9/11, the U.S. shaped a better and more powerful Homeland Security organization. Airport security changed after 9/11 to ensure that nothing harmful to the passengers or to the aircraft gets on the plane. A year after 9/11, the immigration policy changed drastically due to the Homeland Security Act, the Enhanced Border Security, and the Visa Entry Reform Act of 2002. The federal government also expanded the NSA so that they could collect data and potentially spy on U.S. citizens, foreign nationals, and governments. These changes were made to ensure America's full safety. Aside from government changes, U.S. citizens' thoughts have dangerously changed towards Muslims and Middle Eastern people. Since the death of Osama bin Laden, people's thoughts on terrorism have not changed. If anything, they've gotten worse. Osama's death was one of the most impacting events to America because he was one of our worst international enemies. The one thing that should always be kept in mind is that Osama's death will not end the war on terror or the war in the Middle East.